Hello again. Thanks for purchasing the BidBuddy. If you've not installed the BidBuddy yet, you need to do that before watching this video. There's a setup and walkthrough video that will guide you through the installation process. So go ahead and get that BidBuddy installed before going through and watching the strategy video. So let's get into it. First of all, I'm going to cover a lot of information fairly quickly, so don't hesitate to pause or rewatch the video as much as you need. Secondly, the bid optimization strategy I'm about to show you is pretty basic. Depending on the state of your ads, it can take several weeks or even months for a strategy like this to work. There are far more nuanced and effective strategies, but the fundamentals of this strategy are solid. In fact, I use this exact strategy for a couple of smaller clients and one very big client. So here's just a basic breakout of how I'm going to move through the topics here. First, I just want to explain some theory behind this strategy so you kind of understand how it's supposed to work and what you would expect to see as you do it consistently and sort of the improvement over time you would expect to see. Then I want to cover some critical metrics, some things that you probably don't use yet, and if you do, that's great, but I just want to show you exactly what metrics are going to be useful for this strategy and things to keep in mind. Then I want to cover frequency and look back length, which basically just means how often you optimize and how much data you use to optimize with, like 7 days or 14 days or 30 days, something like that. And then lastly, I'll just show you the exact strategy and how to use the filters and the BidBuddy to implement the strategy. So firstly, the theory, I just want to run through this really quick. The strategy is very simple, but it takes time. The fundamental behind the strategy is small incremental changes. So you're never making big dramatic changes unless it's sort of an emergency. Consistency is the key to making this strategy work over time. And to just show you an example of what I mean and how this would look is this. Here's a client's data over about 3-month period. And you can see at the beginning of those months, the ACoS was quite high. It's the green line, and it was pretty volatile. You can also see the cost per click is quite high relative to where it ended up in 90 days. But what you can also see is that gradually over time, the range, meaning the peaks and valleys of the ACoS, start to get smaller and smaller and center around the target, which is 35% for this account. And then eventually towards the end of that 3 months, the peaks and valleys are basically just bouncing around the target itself, which is what you should expect to see. That's what you would want to see. You're never going to get a flat line ACoS. There's always going to be some variation. And if you notice the cost per click, over time it gradually declines, and there are very few major peaks and valleys for the cost per click, which is what you would expect to see with this strategy because you're not making big changes, you're making very small changes very consistently that set you on a trajectory towards the target ACoS. So now let's talk about critical metrics. The first critical metric is CPO, or clicks per order, which is essentially just clicks divided by orders equals clicks per order. This is basically just the inverted conversion rate calculation, and the reason we use this is because it's just easier to work with. The conversion rate calculation gives you a percentage. This gives you a round number. And so here's an example. If you get 120 clicks and you get 15 orders from those clicks, that's 8 clicks per order, or it would be 12.5% conversion rate. The next critical metric is the max average cost per acquisition, or MACPA. And what this is, it's the highest average amount you can spend on a conversion and hit your target ACoS. And it's calculated by calculating the average order value times your target ACoS, expressed as a decimal. That gives you your max average cost per acquisition. It's different than just regular cost per acquisition, which is spend divided by orders. That gives you your cost per acquisition. This is something different. Cost per acquisition is actually giving you how much you are spending. We're looking for how much you can spend. So the example is, if your average order value is $30 and your target ACoS is 25%, expressed as a decimal, that's 0.25, then the maximum you can spend per order is $7.50. That's your maximum average cost per acquisition. It's important to note that individual targets and campaigns can have very different maximum average cost per acquisition. It sort of just depends on the conversion rate of individual targets and campaigns. Finally, and probably the most critical metric, is your maximum average cost per click, your MACPC. And how you calculate this is you take your max average cost per acquisition, you divide that by your CPO, your clicks per order. That gives you your max average cost per click. And what that means is this is the highest average cost per click you can spend on a conversion and hit your target ACoS. This is different from cost per click in that cost per click is spend divided by clicks and tells you how much you are spending on clicks. What we're trying to discover is how much you can spend on clicks and hit your target ACoS. So the example here is if you have a $7.50 maximum average cost per acquisition and it takes 8 clicks per order, then your maximum average cost per click is 94 cents. Once again, it's important to remember that individual targets and campaigns can have very different maximum average cost per click. Now, for frequency and look back, it's pretty basic. I've found good results using 5-day frequency with a 7-day look back, or you can do a 7-day frequency with a 7-day look back. I would consider that standard procedure and probably a good place to start. If you have a smaller account or an account with a higher risk tolerance, a bi-weekly or even a monthly optimization strategy could work, but it'll just take you slightly longer to hit your target. The real key factor when it comes to look back and frequency is that in most cases, you should only be looking back as far as your last change. Overlapping by more than a few days seems to give bad results. There are definitely cases where you want long look back periods, but for routine optimizations, I found that combining old data with post-change data hurts more than it helps. So let's start optimizing. So here's some campaign data from a client in a bulk sheet, and the two big metrics you want to keep in mind while optimizing are your clicks per order and your maximum average cost per acquisition. Your max average cost per click is really useful for, at a glance, figuring out where your account is relative to being optimized if you're not optimized. But when you're optimizing, your max average cost per acquisition will help you determine how to filter certain columns, and your clicks per order will also help with that. It's also important to remember the time frame you're looking at, because if you're looking at, say, a 60-day time frame, you're going to be dealing with much bigger numbers than if you're looking at a 7-day time frame. So keep that in mind when you're deciding how much to filter your spend column by, and you'll understand more when we get there. A useful tip when you are doing your optimizations, every time you make a change, make sure that you highlight the changes that you made. The BidBuddy will automatically do this for you, but it's always important to make sure you're using highlighting just so you remember what cell you actually changed in the sheet. Also, filters are your best friend. You want to be using filters because that will save you a heap of time going through the spreadsheet. And the way you apply filters, you click the row that you want to add a filter to. In this case, you click the top row and then you hit Control-Shift-L and it automatically puts filters on the columns. I also recommend when you download these sheets, the latest iteration of the sheet has frozen cells, which means you can always see the top row or you can see the first few columns. How you remove that is you go to View, Freeze Panels, Unfreeze Panes. There you go. That'll just save you a headache, trust me. So now with our filters applied, the first thing you want to do is go to Entity and open up the filter, unselect everything, and just select Keyword, and then scroll down, and if you have product targeting, click on that. Those are the only two you need. If you don't have product targeting, that's okay. Basically, that means if you have like a category campaign of some kind, or you're actually targeting product ASINs, that will show up. But if you aren't doing that, you won't even have this option. Then you click OK, and it filters out all the other rows. So now we're ready to start optimizing. And for this account, the clicks per order is 12. The maximum average cost per acquisition is $13, which means the maximum average cost per click is $1.08. But the first thing we want to look for is anything that is spending with 0 sales. So the first column we want to filter is actually the orders column. So you click orders, unselect everything, then just select 0. Now this will show you all of the targets that have no sales. Then we want to go to our spend column and select number filters. Then you want to go to greater than or equal to. This is where you type in your maximum average cost per acquisition, which in this case is $13. Then we click OK, and it filters down to only the targets that have spent more than our maximum average cost per acquisition and had no sales. For these targets, you highlight, you click on the BidBuddy, it pulls up the box, and you want to decrease the bid by percentage, and you want to decrease them by 15%. Then you want to go back to your spend column and clear the filter from spend. The next thing you want to do, and this is just sort of to help you out, is go to your bid column, click the filter, then go filter by color and select no fill. Now, every time you make an edit, the only rows that will be left are the rows that you have not optimized yet. Next, we want to go back to our spend column and we want to just uncheck the 0 box. This gives us everything else that has not spent our maximum average cost per acquisition, but has spent more than 0. And what I like to do with these is highlight them all. Another highlighting tip is Control, Shift, and use an arrow key, and that will highlight whatever direction you press. So Control Shift down highlights the entire column that I want to change. Then click Adjust, it pulls up the box, and these I decrease by 10%. And yet another quick navigation tip is if you hit Control and use the arrow keys, you will navigate to one end or the next filled column at the click of a button. So if I hit Control up, it goes all the way to the top of the page. Then you go back to your spend column and clear the filters. Now you are just left with targets that have had no orders and also have spent nothing. So what you want to do is click anywhere in the top row and hit Alt semicolon. What this does is it highlights only the visible cells. Then hold Control and click the first row twice to unhighlight it because you don't want to delete that. And then you can just delete all of these rows. You don't need them. Then unfilter your orders column. Now you are just left with everything else that has had an order. So next, we're going to start filtering on the ACOS column. And we're going to start with high ACOS items. And what high ACOS items means in this case is anything with an ACOS 45% or more over your target. So in this case, the target ACOS is 25%, so 45% on top of that is 70%. So what we do is we come over to the ACOS column, we select number filters, go to greater than or equal to, and you have to use the decimal form of the percentage, which is 0.7. Then you click OK, and it filters down to only the targets that have greater than 70% ACOS. And for these targets, you highlight, click Adjust, and decrease them by 10%. Then clear the filter. Next, we want to optimize anything with 25% to 45% higher than our target. And so because we just did 45% and over, and earlier we applied this filter to filter out changed rows, all we have to do is come to ACOS, number filters, greater than or equal to, and hit 0.5 because that's 25% higher than our target of 25. Now we have everything that is over 50% ACOS, but lower than 70% ACOS because we've already filtered those out and adjusted them. Then you just need to highlight, click Adjust, and decrease these by 7%. Then, just as before, clear the filters from the ACOS column. Next, we want to do anything that is between 10 and 25% higher than our target. So, again, back to ACOS, number filter, greater than or equal to, 10% over our target is 35%, 0.35. Click OK. Highlight the cells, and you want to adjust these down by 4%. Clear the ACOS column. Now we want to lower anything that is between 3% higher and 10% higher than our target. But we also want to add one additional step to this optimization. The first thing we want to do is actually filter orders, uncheck the number 1, and click OK. Then we want to go through our normal process of selecting our ACOS, going to number filters, greater than or equal to, and this is 0.28 because our target is 25 and 3% over that is 28. We click OK, then we highlight these cells, click Adjust, and we only want to decrease these by 2%. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, why didn't we adjust down the keywords with one order. And the reason I don't like to do that is because it's entirely possible there's just some missing attribution for those keywords, and we don't want to lower their bid if, let's say, another sale comes in and actually lowers its ACoS and makes it below our target and actually a very good keyword. So most of the time, if it's 3 to 10% higher than my target, but it only has one sale, I kind of just ignore it. If it turns out to be a problem keyword, it will eventually get adjusted. So it's nothing really to worry about. Generally, they are not big contributors anyway because they're only producing one sale. So now we clear the ACoS row. We also want to clear the orders row. So that was our last adjustment down, and now we want to adjust things, and this is pretty simple. We just go to our ACoS column, we filter by number, and now we want to do less than or equal to, and what we do here is we actually want to subtract 3% from our target. Our target is 25, so that means we want 22 or 0.22. Click OK. So this is everything that is 3% lower than our target. And the way we optimize these is highlight, click adjust, and you want to increase bid by percentage, and we're going to increase them by 3%. And the reason we don't raise bids more aggressively is A, many times you're already overbidding and you're just crushing on the keyword, so a higher bid isn't really that necessary. And B, you encounter far fewer outlier bad days if you don't aggressively increase bids. Remember, the strategy here is small changes over time get us to our target. So we want to remove the filter now from ACoS, and you see what we have left over are just things that are slightly over our target, but they've only produced one sale, and it's okay to just highlight these and remember Alt semicolon, right click, delete row, and it gets rid of them. And if you see nothing else left, that means you did everything right. What you want to do now is click on the bid filter and clear filters from bids, and you can see all of your changes here, and then you just save your file and upload it. You do the exact same method for sponsored brands and sponsored display tabs as you did here in sponsored products, and when you're finished you just save and upload your file. So that's that. I hope this strategy video helped you see what a helpful tool the BidBuddy is, and it comes in handy just about every day for me. So good luck. Thanks for trying out the BidBuddy. And if you're interested in learning more about any services I offer, don't hesitate to reach out to me directly by email at richard@sellerhelper.com.